Welcome back to the Stories of Freedom podcast. I'm Chris Weddington, and Kayla's here with us again.
Hey, guys.
And then we have a guest, James Sproull from the church.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
So we went ahead and got it going this week, which is good because that's what I was hoping for, that we could get this every other week. So this is hopefully the start of them being a little bit more consistent. So, so James, how long have you been going to the church for?
About a year and a half now.
Okay. So about a year and a half you've been coming here. And what kind of, I guess when you started coming to the church, what kept you coming back? Like what about this church made you come back?
We visited a few other churches in the neighborhood, in the area. And actually actually VCF was the only one that loved on us the second we walked in the door. So we felt really at home about that. So that's why we continue to come back here.
Yeah.
It's great fellowship, great people that come to this church. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to attend here. So
cool. All right. Well, I met James. I met you here, but I really got to know you a little bit more at the men's encounter in September when we went. Yep. And I didn't know your testimony or your story until you sent it to me this week. But I knew it was good because you'd hinted a little bit at it before, and then you shared it at this men's encounter, right?
I did, yeah.
This last couple weeks, about 2 weeks ago.
About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to go, so, cool. Well, I'm excited
me too.
to hear it and to share it with everybody, and we'll just go from there. So you can go ahead and get started whenever you want.
All right. Well, it's gonna start in high school. Back when I was in high school, believe it or not, through all the drinking and driving and drug use and everything like that, I still maintained a A- average in high school.
Oh, wow.
Which I still find shocking to this point. I was doing some pretty terrible things. I graduated high school and met my first wife at the age of 20. We got married when I was 21, and in order to better our lives, I decided to go join the Navy. That was a very proud moment in my life. I spent 10 and a half years in the Navy.
Oh, wow. Thank you for your service.
No problem.
Thank you.
I would do it again in a heartbeat if was able to. I found God while I was in the Navy, actually, and what I didn't know was there was a walk with God that you had to do, and once you were saved, you needed to give to the church body and you needed to give back to the Lord, and I never was told that. All I was told is, hey, you're saved now, the Lord's with you, go have a nice day. Nobody told me there was a walk. So while I was in the Navy, me and my wife tried to have kids. First year, nothing. Second year, nothing. Third year, nothing. On to the fourth year, still nothing. And I was being deployed overseas, and on deployment on my ship that I was on board the USS Nimitz for a good 4 years. So as we come back, we keep trying to have kids. Well into the fifth year, we still hadn't she still hadn't gotten pregnant. And we'd gone through tests and everything. Neither one of us were unable. Right. Nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
It just wasn't happening. And I got deployed again, and this time she just couldn't handle the separation. And when I got back, her mom said she was coming to visit. I was like, okay, great, no problem. And next thing you know, we're at a restaurant the next night, and she's announcing to me in a public place that she's going to be leaving me the following morning, and they're going to be driving back to Ohio, and that'll be the end of our marriage. And I just went, what?
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just literally blown out of the water.
No kidding.
And there was a time when it made me feel so bitter, so angry, so mad that happened. So there was a time that alcohol sufficed that for me at one point. So I went back to drinking again after the divorce. And my superiors in the Navy said, hey, you're going through some really bad mental things right now. Maybe you should go see a counselor. So I took them up on their offer. I went to go see one of the Navy counselors. Just so happens at the time, she told me she was a single female, so we started dating. Not a good thing. Because months later, I found out that she was actually married and her husband was deployed overseas.
Oh, wow.
So having broken up with the counselor, my ex-wife called me up and said, hey, I'm going to be out there can we go out to dinner or something? I said, sure. Mm-hmm. I was still holding some very bitter thoughts to her.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know how to forgive or that I should or needed to forgive.
Yeah.
So it was a good visit. She went back to Ohio and called me about a month later and told me she was pregnant.
Wow.
With our child. And I was like, are you kidding me? And she goes, no, I'm not kidding you. I'll send it to you. And so she sent me the proof from the doctor's office that, yes, she was pregnant. I went, okay, great. So we talked about it, and I was basically didn't want a thing to do with her. Mm-hmm. So I actually demanded that she get an abortion. And without much to do about it all, she agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we murdered our first child after, now thinking about earlier in my testimony where I said for 5 years we were trying to have kids. This is the same woman I was trying to have a child with.
Yeah.
So I'll just let that sink into you for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now that I'm a Christian, I know that I was a murderer then. It takes two to tango. So it's not just the woman's decision, it was my decision as well. Plus I was a little bit angry towards her and said, no, you are going to do this.
Yeah.
And I was in California, she was in Ohio. So it's not like I physically beat her to the doctor's office and told them, yeah, you're going to have to perform this operation.
Right. She
She agreed to it. So we both murdered our first child, basically.
Yeah.
So I turned to a lot of drug use and a lot of alcohol use. I was an absolute wreck at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We had finalized our divorce, and in California it took a good 6 months to do that. It's not like here in Nevada where it's a snap of a finger and you're divorced. I started a computer business when I was in the Navy over at NAS Lemoore, California. I found out I was the only computer guy from Sacramento, California, all the way down to Bakersfield, California, and I was getting just jobs.
Yeah.
Lots of contracts. I was making tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Wow.
And 90% of it was being blown on alcohol, drugs, loose women, and cocaine. And that's a lot of cocaine.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. It got to the point where all that was much more important than my business. So the people that were running my business were doing the best they could, but without a proper leader, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
It's going to fail. And that's exactly what it did. It started to fail. And it was all my fault that it was failing because I wasn't spending money on the business like I should. I wasn't paying its bills and things like that. I was just blowing all this money on stupid things, drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And eventually I had to close the doors, so I had to let 3 people go that were trying to do well for their family and force them to go find other jobs and unemployment and all that fun stuff that wasn't very fun at all for them. I then started lying to people and telling them, oh, the economy killed my business. The economy killed my business. Which was an absolute lie. It was me who killed my business. I knew it was me who killed my business, but I didn't want to take responsibility about it. And I was, turned into a raging alcoholic for years. I had abusive language. I was lying to family, friends, and anybody else just to get what I wanted. Nothing else mattered. It was just what I wanted. I was what you can call the most selfish individual you've ever known in your life. If it wasn't to benefit me, I didn't care. So one day my mother called me up and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm out looking for a job, and I was out looking for a job. She goes, well, I need you to move up to Nevada to help your grandmother. She's in an ailing shape right now, and she needs help. And since you're the only one available, can you do this? I thought to myself, Nevada, gambling, booze, women, fantastic. So I went and moved to Nevada. It was real easy for me at the time because I didn't have a job to hold me down or anything like that. So I packed up my stuff and moved up to Nevada where my grandmother was needing help. So after I took care of my grandmother's needs for that and partied, I finally got a job with the state of Nevada. And during that time with the state of Nevada, I hooked up with this one girl who had a son. we had a son together. The thing that happened the first time was not going to happen the second time, because I knew that's what was killing me on the inside. I just didn't know how to let it go then. So I was a computer programmer for the state of Nevada in the Library and Archives building for about 8 years, and I was drinking and using drugs all that time. I met this other girl who turned out to be the woman that God had chosen for me. She also worked in the administrative department in the library. She worked upstairs, and I worked downstairs in the basement. And we started dating. My son's mom wouldn't have anything to do with me. I was too much of an alcoholic, a drug user, and a very angry man at the time. So we broke up. I started dating this other girl years later, who worked at the library. And about a year and a half after we were dating, we got married, and that was a very joyful day for me. Well, she worked because she was already a saved Christian, and I didn't know. I knew I was saved. I knew I had accepted the Lord into my heart, but I had no clue what was in store for me. We came to the church here for the first time, and it was nice. Worship was good, and the sermon was great, and everything like that. But I was still a very angry, upset individual. And then my wife and my brothers, my newly found brothers and sisters in Christ, started teaching me the way of the walk and the fellowshipping and how we're supposed to lean on each other, and iron sharpens iron. And I found out that all that time, I thought I was doing it right. I was absolutely doing it the worst possible way you could. And that was by myself, with no God in my life. So I learned from the Lord that I needed to get rid of the booze and the alcohol and the drugs. Did that. My wife helped me through that, and that was great to have her there. It was great moral support, but the real power came from God. The second thing is he showed me a lot of things that I had done to myself and things I had done to other people that I had to let go of, because these turned out to be bonds, chains. I mean, my heart was wrapped with chains that, it didn't know how to love anymore. So I started letting go of the things that were bothering me. I first tried to forgive those people who hurt me first, but I just couldn't do it. And, there was people who owed me money, people who lied to me, people who told me one thing and did another. I mean, there was all kinds of treachery, that I was holding a grudge against, and I just couldn't let it all go. And then the Holy Spirit told me, well, that's because you're doing that wrong too. Okay? You need to forgive yourself first. So for a good 6 months, I learned how to forgive myself. And once that actually sunk in, my heart felt free enough to where I could now call some of these people on the phone and tell them I forgive them for the things that they did for me, to me.
Yeah.
And I gained forgiveness from these people. And for those people that I couldn't get a hold of on the phone anymore, or couldn't find on Facebook, or after a thorough search, I turned and gave it to God. And Jesus forgave me for those things that those people had did for me. So I got freedom either way. And we all know that non-forgiveness is like taking a poison pill and praying to God the other person dies. It just doesn't work that way. Unless you forgive yourself, you cannot forgive anybody else first. You have to be good with you and good with God. Then once that occurs, you could start to forgive other people. And I had this vision about this room full of books on the floor, and the room was divided into two. Some of the books were open, some of the books were closed, some were pretty thick, some were pretty thin. I found out that these books were people that I needed to forgive, or people that had done me harm that I needed to forgive. So it's an ongoing thing from your entire life. You need to forgive your parents. You need to forgive your brothers and sisters, your best friend down the street who did you wrong, but you don't even know he did you wrong. It's all about forgiveness. So I became free. I'm a free man now. I have no...
Praise Jesus.
I have no boundaries at all. I mean, I volunteer at the church now on just about anything that comes up, you know, and because I love doing it. The fellowship is just could have ever asked for.
Yeah.
You know, God has provided for me now for everything in my life. My son lives with us now. He goes to school here in the local area. Even though his mom has full and total custody of him, he's chosen to live with me.
Wow.
That's got to be
beautiful.
because of God.
That's powerful.
Yeah, that's because of God.
Wow.
So learn how to forgive yourself first. Then you will find it so much easier to be able to forgive others that have done you wrong or that you've done wrong. You know, and forgiving yourself is all about what you've done wrong to other people, because that affects you. And your actions and the things you've done are all about forgiveness. So don't carry the pain and guilt with you. Release it. Become free. Find the freedom that God is just trying to hand you right now. You know, it's there. All you got to do is pick it up.
Yeah.
He tells you exactly how to go about doing it. And if you got a good fellowship like here at VCF does, it's all, the battle's won. It's over.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, that's about what I got, you guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I had a question for you. So, you know, you talked about how important it was for you to learn to forgive yourself before you could forgive others. What is it that, because I know there's a lot of people that are listening to this that probably have a background where they were doing stuff to other people that hurt them, and they're trying to come to the same, you know, trying to do the same thing, forgive themselves for what they have done to other people. How did you learn to forgive yourself? I'm like, what helped you?
Looking into yourself. Okay, so here's a scenario. I used to be into software piracy when I was a younger man. Right before I got into the Navy, see, I was a computer geek from since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. My dad introduced me to electronics and computers because that's what he did. So I got hooked into this one group of individuals that pirated software. And I was going around selling pirated software. I mean, it looked legitimate. It felt legitimate. Your computer even thought it was legitimate, but it was absolutely counterfeit.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And it's those kind of things that you do that you look back and say, wow, that was absolutely wrong. And pursue those people that you did that to. Literally go out and look for them. And try and gain their forgiveness. You may have to pay some money back. You may have to make reprimations for it.
Yeah.
Okay? But it is worth the freedom that your heart will feel. Because right now, if you're holding forgiveness against somebody, your heart's in chains.
Yeah.
You know, it's not beating right. It's not working right. It's not functioning right. It's not getting the input it needs, nor the output that has to come out. You know, it's in bondage. And unless you free that, you can never find true freedom.
Yeah.
You know, unless you give it up, give it to the Lord. And if you can't find some of these people, which I'll tell you straight up, I was not able to find some of those people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look forever for them. You know, that's not what God wants you to do.
Right.
But you have an avenue. It's called Jesus Christ. He can go straight. You can go straight to him with these things, and he will forgive you for them. You know?
Yeah, and of course the enemy doesn't want you to think that. He wants you to think like, oh no, you're going to be too embarrassed to go do that. You know, so your flesh takes over and your pride takes over. No, I don't want to admit to what I did wrong. So I'm just going to ask, you know, forgiveness just between me and God and call it good. And I think your shirt right now is perfect. Did you plan on wearing that today?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, it's perfect. So his shirt says fear is a liar. And I think it's so perfect because I feel like everything stems from fear of some sort.
Absolutely.
No matter how
and you're going to be the most afraid you ever have when you try and search these people to ask for forgiveness because you know what you did to them. You know it. And the enemy is in there saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You have to just plow forward, because you have Jesus on your side. Your battle's already been won.
Already won, yep.
Okay, all you got to do is step up to the plate.
Yeah.
And the game is won.
So. Exactly. Yeah. It's so beautiful. And I love your story because I think it's like the perfect picture of like what he can redeem you from.
Absolutely.
Like it's the perfect picture of redemption. And I love that. And I think it's very inspiring. And so I thank you for sharing it.
No problem.
I think it's
love to be here.
I love it.
Yeah. I think I like the story too. It was good. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, it's interesting because you were talking about how, you know,
well, the biggest thing in my story was I didn't know it at the time, but I turned into a murderer.
Right.
Think about it. I mean, I used to, once I realized I was a murderer, and once I became a Christian and started walking the walk with Jesus, here's a little trivia question for you guys. What does Moses, King David, and the Apostle Paul, and me all have in common? Answer, we're all murderers. You know, they murdered physical people. Well, me through my ex-wife, we murdered our child.
Yeah.
From an abortion.
Yeah.
I'm just as responsible for that act as she is.
Yeah.
And I know this. God knows this. That's why I've asked her for forgiveness. That's why I've asked our Lord for forgiveness. So.
Did people respond well to you? Like when you, I mean, like, because you know, when you call them up, when you find them and you call them up and you talk to them.
90% of them don't even remember who I am.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
So as I'm sitting there trying to explain, look, I don't have time for this, and they hang up the phone.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Okay.
Well, I tried, you know, and I'll give that to the Lord too.
Yeah.
He didn't want to hear from me, or somebody I'll call up. Hey, do you remember me? Yeah, I remember you. Click.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, you know. So that individual needs to have forgiveness too. So I forgive that individual for what they just did to me and for what I did, and they're holding a grudge. And then I also give that grudge to the Lord too for them, because I know I can't really do that, but I'd like to pray for them.
Right.
You know, this person is holding a grudge against me, Lord. You know, please remove that from their heart.
Right.
You know, whether they ever speak to me again, please remove that from their heart.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of times too, like God just wants to see that you're willing, like Abraham with his son. Like he just wanted to see that you would do, you know, what it took to please the Lord.
Absolutely.
You know, so like he saw you trying, you know, and it's like, he's like, okay, you know, like that's what you were supposed to do.
Yep.
You know, you were just supposed to put it out there, put your heart out there, and then try, you know.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what I did to some people you can't get a hold of.
Right.
You know, they just don't exist.
Right.
I mean, they're out there.
Right.
They just probably don't, you know, they're below the radar or whatever, whatever the saying is nowadays.
Right.
And, you know, you don't need to spend your time forever looking for these people, because that's a crutch as well.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. So make sure you give it a good effort. Give it a very good effort, but put a time limit on it. If you don't get a hold of these people by this X amount of time, give it to the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, He'll be happy to take it off your heart. I assure you, He won't have any problems doing that.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Can I just say it was interesting? Like, see, I didn't know you very well before the men's encounter. I knew you a little bit from being back here in the sound booth and stuff like that. And I hadn't met you that long before that. I didn't realize you had gone here for a year and a half, you know. Yeah. But I can tell you that I didn't know you very well before then, but what I've seen from you afterwards, I mean, just the fact that I didn't even know much about you before, and then afterwards, like you said, you're volunteering for everything. You're just completely on fire for God.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing to see that. Like, I mean, just watch you come back and just see that God is working in you is incredible.
I'm telling you, it's the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Yeah. And you can tell. I mean, you can just tell. And, you know, hearing your story and then seeing this, I mean, seeing what God has obviously done in your life and how He's taken you from the life that you had before. I mean, here you were successful and you know, in a business, and you took that success and you know, use that money for all sorts of things and destroyed other people's lives in the meantime. And then, you know, but your focus obviously wasn't where it should be. And then now it's just, it's crazy. Like just the difference. And,
you know, my wife said, well, if you're not walking with God, you're building a testimony.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was building a testimony for a couple of decades.
A good one, yeah.
So, you know, hopefully this will help somebody
I'm sure
to learn how to forgive. But for the most important thing my message is trying to tell everybody is learn to forgive yourself first. Don't try going out there and trying to forgive somebody and say the words, because just going to find that person and saying the words is not going to do a thing for you until your heart is free for yourself. You know,
exactly.
The Lord wants your heart. So give your heart to the Lord first, then go out and clean up the rest of your heart for the other people you've done harm to.
Yeah. And that kind of, it's kind of sad. Like a lot of people think that like freedom comes from having an abundance of money. that you can spend on all these frivolous things.
Not
but it's
at
like
all.
freedom is in Jesus. And people think that Jesus is some sort of bondage. Like, oh no, it's all these rules, all these regulations, things you can't do. But it's like, it's the complete opposite, because you feel completely free. Your heart is completely free. All those chains are completely broken. Money and drugs and everything else, those were the chains, but it's so hard for people to see that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of, have friends from those times that still drink, still do drugs and stuff like that. And when I go around them and they do that in front of me, it doesn't bother me at all, because I know I'm free.
Yeah.
You know, because that was the temptation. The devil's putting you in front of that again. Oh, here, your buddies are doing it. Come on, hook yourself up. I'm like, I don't need that anymore.
Free,
you know, I am free. So
you
know, and it's not just I have an addictive personality. I know I do, but it's not just because I have an addictive personality. It's because I have the grace of God.
Exactly.
So.
Yep. I think it's like when of course you think of him as a father. It's like your father's watching you. You don't want to disappoint him. Yeah. So you're not going to fall into that stuff because you know he's watching you. And it's like when that is more important than the temptation, Satan just loses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like that, the devil saw me with my head down and thought he had won until I said amen.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And he's never going to win in my life again. I've got the Almighty on my side.
Yeah.
You know, that war's already done before it even starts.
It is done. Yep. Well, cool.
So, it's been fun, you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm sure this is going to, there's people that.
Well, if there's anybody in the church listening to this, if they need to talk, or I'm totally available. Come and see me. Seek me out. I am here and we'll help you.
Absolutely.
So.
And then just to let everybody know, if you have a testimony you want to share, I've changed the email address, which I know I covered last episode. It's storiesofreedompodcast@gmail.com. So go ahead and send me an email there if you want to share your testimony, or find me or Kayla at church, and
let us know.
And we'll get you on here to share your testimony. So. Look for another one in 2 weeks. And if you haven't liked us on Facebook yet, go like us on Facebook. Just go to Facebook and type in Stories of Freedom, and you'll find us. And I'm posting all the episodes on there. Not everybody uses a phone, smartphone where they can.
Good. I've got a buddy of mine down in San Diego. I'm going to shoot this down to.
And I've been working with Noah this last week to get it on the website. So we're just trying to get it formatted right. So it should be on valleycf.org pretty soon.
Awesome.
So But thanks again, James, for sharing.
No problem. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
And everybody else.
Taking the time in doing this, by the way. I'm sure it helps a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We love having people on here. So.
All right. Well, have a good week, guys.
Thanks. You too.
Yeah.